Look closely at the back of a man's neck when he isn't paying attention. Not at his smile, not at the heavy bags he carries, but at the collar of his shirt. Alex was standing in the middle of a sparkling, perfectly sterile city mall. He was holding Henry's brightly colored new toy in one hand and my heavy shopping bags in the other. He was smiling, looking completely happy in the air-conditioned glow. But as he turned his head to check the directory map, the harsh fluorescent lights caught the back of his neck. I stopped breathing for a second. The collar of his best shirt was frayed to the threads. The fabric was painfully thin, faded, carrying the invisible ghost of the Kon-Tum sun and the farm's red dirt. He had just bought the farm a brand new tractor. He had bought me a beautiful silk dress. He had bought Henry enough toys to fill our entire bamboo porch back home. Yet here he was, the man who carries our entire world, still wearing a 3-year-old shirt he refused to throw away. A sharp, heavy pang of guilt hit my chest. Welcome back to our family's quiet corner. If you've ever loved someone who gives everything and asks for nothing, you know this exact feeling. But what happens when the provider is the one left behind? Families that build a life from dirt operate on a silent, unspoken rule. The husband is usually the very last person to receive anything. We were supposed to be on a rare family trip, taking a breath away from the timber, the soil, and the endless maintenance of our rural life. The city was loud, crowded, and polished, but Alex didn't belong to the polished floors. His hands, calloused and rough from building our wooden house and tending the crops, wrapped gently around Henry's tiny fingers. I watched him standing in the crowd, trying to figure out where to take us for lunch. He never looked at the store windows for himself. He looked at the bakery for Henry and the women's boutiques for me. I realized, watching him, that Alex pours every single drop of the farm's profits into the business, into his wife, and into his son. He treats his own needs as completely invisible. That frayed collar wasn't just old fabric, it was a physical map of his sacrifices. True family building often means one person quietly absorbs the deficits so the rest of us don't have to feel them. Right at that moment, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Even hundreds of miles away in the city, the farm never really lets him go. It was Ba Tang calling from the village to check on the workshop roof. Instantly, Alex shifted from a relaxed father to the vigilant protector of our livelihood. His brow furrowed, his voice dropping into that serious, practical tone he always uses when solving mechanical problems. "Yes, uncle, check the southeast corner where the rain pools," he instructed, stepping slightly away from the flow of the shopping crowd to hear better. He was entirely distracted, his mind suddenly pulled back into the rural rhythm of Quang Nhai, calculating repair costs and timber quality. This was my window. While he was deep in conversation, patiently explaining drainage to Ba Tang, I quietly let go of Henry's hand for just a moment, passing him safely to his father's side and slipped away. I didn't say a word. I just backed into the moving crowd, leaving Alex safely occupied. I navigated past the bright toy stores and coffee shops until I found what I was looking for, a quiet, high-quality men's clothing boutique. I didn't reach for the company card we use for farm supplies. I didn't even use our shared family budget. Instead, I reached deep into the bottom of my purse and pulled out a small, tightly folded stack of cash. It wasn't a lot, but it was mine. These were my secret savings, small crumpled bills I'd kept from selling extra garden vegetables, baskets of limes, and surplus eggs at the morning market over the last few months. My hands, familiar with wet soil and kitchen knives, felt completely out of place as I touched the crisp, sturdy fabrics on the display tables. But my heart was incredibly clear. I wasn't just buying clothes, I was restoring dignity. I carefully selected 2 crisp, solid shirts, the kind of shirts a man who builds a life from nothing deserves to wear. As the cashier handed me the elegant paper bag, the pressure in my chest tightened. I knew Alex would never ask for this. In fact, I knew he would fight me on it. When Alex finally lowered his phone, the conversation with Bartang settled, but his mind was still half buried in the damp timber and corrugated tin of our farm. He turned around, expecting to see Henry's small hand tucked safely inside mine, waiting patiently near the illuminated directory board. Instead, there was only empty space. I wasn't there. In the quiet, slow rhythm of Kontum, losing sight of someone for a minute just means they walked behind a bamboo screen to fetch water or stepped into the back garden. But in the overwhelming, echoing expanse of a city mall, surrounded by thousands of fast-moving strangers, blinding lights, and a dizzying maze of glass, the sudden absence hits a protector like a physical blow. His protective instinct, usually a low, steady hum in the background of our lives, spiked into genuine panic. He immediately scooped Henry up into his arms, holding the boy tight against his chest. His eyes narrowed, scanning the moving sea of faces with a sudden, sharp intensity. The polished marble floors and the scent of expensive perfumes felt suddenly hostile to him. A man who can navigate a dense forest in the dead of night was completely unnerved by a bright, sterile shopping center simply because his family wasn't entirely in his line of sight. He took 3 fast, frantic steps toward the main corridor, and then he stopped. Through the crowd, he spotted me. I was walking out of the boutique, weaving my way back toward him. My hands were held awkwardly behind my back, deliberately hiding the crisp paper bag. I must have looked like a strange combination of a woman deeply guilty for spending her own money and a mischievous child carrying a secret. The frantic tension in his broad shoulders instantly dropped, replaced immediately by a heavy, confused sigh. He set Henry back down on his feet. As I walked closer, I could see the exact moment his protective panic shifted into puzzled suspicion. He noticed my hands. He noticed the stiff way I was holding my posture, protecting whatever I was hiding from the crowd. He didn't ask where I went. He just looked at me, waiting, his eyes dropping from my face down to the hidden space behind my back. I stepped up to him, my heart beating unusually fast. Without a word, I brought my hands forward and held out the elegant boutique bag. Alex looked down at it, then back up at my face. He didn't reach for it. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low, cautious. "It's for you," I said softly, pushing the bag closer to his chest. His immediate reaction wasn't a smile. It wasn't gratitude. It was a physical, instinctive recoil, almost as if the bag itself was something dangerous. His rough, calloused hands permanently stained with engine oil, plant sap, and red dirt, came up quickly, not to take the bag, but to push it gently back toward me. "Tuna, no." He shook his head, his brow furrowing with genuine discomfort. "Take it back. I don't need new clothes. You know what I do every day. I work in the dirt. I sweat in the timber yard. It's a complete waste of money to put expensive fabric on me." This is the hidden crisis of a strong provider, a man who shoulders the heavy burdens of both family and business, often entirely forgets his own value outside of being a machine that provides. He had bought me a silk dress without a single second thought. But the idea of wearing something nice himself felt like a betrayal to his practical, survivalist nature. I faced a very quiet, very difficult choice right there in the middle of the crowded mall. I could back down. I could agree with him, save his pride, turn around to return the shirts, and keep my little vegetable money hidden away for a rainy day on the farm. It would be easier. But true love, the kind that sustains a marriage through droughts and storms, requires you to actively fight for your partner's dignity, even when they fiercely refuse to fight for it themselves. I didn't lower my hands. I stepped 1 inch closer, forcing him to stand still. "I am not taking it back," I told him, my voice steady, locking my eyes onto his. "You buy the tractor for the farm. You buy the toys for Henry. But you are still a man, Alex, not just a worker." I shoved the smooth paper bag firmly into his hands, forcing his calloused fingers to close around the handles. The visual contrast was striking, the elegant store packaging held by hands that had literally built our home from the ground up. He stood there, frozen, his jaw tight. For the first time all day, the man who takes care of absolutely everyone was forced, against his own stubborn will, to accept being taken care of. Back in the quiet of our hotel room, away from the blinding lights and the chaotic, shifting crowds of the city, the silence between us felt incredibly heavy. There were no grand speeches about him being the head of the household or the stoic leader of our small farm. There was just the two of us, sitting on the edge of the bed, confronting the undeniable truth wrapped inside that paper bag. Alex slowly pulled the crisp, dignified shirt out of its packaging. He sat there, tracing the neat, strong stitching with his calloused thumb. His hands, usually so steady and decisive when pulling apart a stubborn, soot-choked diesel engine or managing heavy timber back home, hesitated. He looked at the smooth cotton as if it belonged in another world. He genuinely felt it was too nice for him. This is the hidden cost of constantly being the protector. The longer you act as the impenetrable shield for your family, the more you forget what it feels like to simply be cared for. I stepped close to him, gently but firmly batting his rough hands away from the fabric. I reached out and began to unbutton his old frayed shirt myself. The loose threads and thinning collar had absorbed 3 entire years of his sweat, his physical pain, and his silent midnight worries about our future. As the worn fabric finally slipped off his shoulders, I looked up into his tired, beautiful eyes. "You gave us a beautiful life," I said softly, making sure he heard every single word. "But people shouldn't look at you and think you are still struggling in the dirt. You've earned the right to stand tall. Put it on. Let me be proud of the man I married." A few days later, the underlying tension had entirely evaporated as we finally returned to the familiar, uneven dirt roads of Quangai. Walking through our front bamboo gate, greeted instantly by the fresh, vibrant scent of the Chantrao Ko vines thriving in our garden, our simple wooden house felt incredibly warm and welcoming. It felt whole. Alex wasn't wearing his old torn collar anymore. He had put on the new shirt, and it fit his frame perfectly. I stood on the porch and watched him effortlessly lift Henry into the air, the afternoon sun catching the clean, sturdy fabric across his back. He was standing visibly taller, his shoulders broader, completely unburdened by the invisible heavy weight of his own self-neglect. He set Henry down, walked over to me, and pulled me into a deep, quiet hug, resting his chin heavily on my shoulder in absolute peace. We spend so many years pouring all of our energy into the soil, into our businesses, and into the future of our children, hoping it all flourishes. But true family happiness requires us to realize that the person standing right beside us in the dirt needs tending to as well. When a strong provider is finally allowed to take off his armor and be cherished, he doesn't lose his strength. As the warm evening light faded across our quiet wooden porch, leaving us in a fragile but beautiful peace, I couldn't help but wonder, how many other silent, loving sacrifices are hiding in your own home, just waiting to be noticed? Sometimes, the strongest foundation you can build for your family is simply reminding the builder that he matters too. If this quiet moment reminded you of your own home, please leave a comment and let us know where you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to join our family's journey, and we will see you in the next video.